Okay, so it seems like there's been a little bit of a situation going on with the Sykkuno stuff even further, as more and more people have been coming out about their own experiences. Now, of course, a lot of the stuff that's gone on in the hemomalvt doc and all of that kind of stuff with the 7-year relationship and the cheating and all of this kind of stuff has been very, bad to hear. And of course, I don't think he's in the right at all, whatsoever, right? But I do think, obviously, there's been a lot of people coming out with their own experiences, many having very different interactions with him. Some, closer to what hemomalvt also kind of went through, but also, some closer to just literally just saying hi to him, right? And of course, it does get to a point where some people are starting to, put out clips, putting out, tweets and whatever about him, which end up trying to paint him as a worse person than I think he actually is, right? Because of course, I do think he is a bad person, but I think at the end of the day, it does get a little bit ridiculous whenever people start to kind of put out stuff that essentially is their fault, right? And of course, there's been a lot of discussion around this one clip which has come out from a Twitch streamer called Leia, who comes forward saying that Sykkuno allegedly did stuff with her in a Las Vegas hotel room during Evo. Now, this is a 12-minute clip. I'm going to give you the summary of exactly what happened. So essentially, she described sharing a hotel room with Sykkuno at Evo Las Vegas after he offered his extra room when she mentioned expensive hotels. They planned to watch a horror movie together in that room. Sykkuno made a move. Leia gave him, blank, oral that night, then got out of bed, ate a banana, and disassociated while staring out the window. The next morning, a hug escalated into straight up doing it. And obviously, Leia, hard of hearing, said, when he asked if it was safe, and he, I don't know if I can really say that on YouTube, but you can see what it says here. He did that, right? According to her, right? Saying Leia later asked Sykkuno if he sleeps around when his last relationship was. He claimed it wasn't normal for him, and that his last relationship was 3 years ago. And again, I'm not sure exactly what year the Evo was, if it was this year. But again, obviously we know he's been in a relationship for 7 years, right? So again, it's just another case of him obviously not being so truthful about the fact of him being in a relationship. Said she felt blindsided and regretted it, barely slept, moved to her friend's hotel room for the rest of Evo, and struggled emotionally afterwards. In follow-up talks, Sykkuno gave vague answers and apologized for giving the wrong impression. They reconciled as friends, continued playing games, and saw each other at TwitchCon. So again, I do think that this is essentially one of these situations where, yes, I think this is another case where he wasn't so truthful about his relationship status to people, and obviously it seems like he was, sleeping around a little bit in terms of, just cheating on his girlfriend, right? But I do think at the end of the day, though, all of the other stuff that she mentioned isn't exactly very relevant, right? Obviously, she says that, she was hard of hearing, and that, she just said, without actually realizing what she was agreeing to, which, of course, that's bad and all, but I feel like, you got to kind of do your own, due diligence to make sure you know what you're saying yes and no to, right? Because if you say yes, right, of course, I feel like, that's a yes, right? You're not going to go, wait, are you hard of hearing? Like, do you have hearing problems? Like, no one's going to ask that to anybody if they don't even know you that well. Because as far as I know, they know each other slightly, and that's about it, right? Probably not to the point where he knows that she has hearing issues, if she has hearing issues, right? I do think it gets a little bit crazy when we're trying to, like, make it worse than it is, because some people were trying to claim that he straight up, like, R-worded her and whatever, which I just don't think is the case, right? I think it does get a little bit too far whenever people start to bring that stuff into the kind of stuff. And people saying, yeah, I'm a victim because I did consensual sex that I regret. So get out of here. I'm a beer review dog. Shut up. I'll see some people saying, sounds like blank to me. Most of y'all don't get blank, so you're defending him, lol. Bro is a creep and should be locked up for good. Which, again, I just don't think it sounds like that. It sounds like a misconception of, obviously what they were discussing at the time, as well as maybe just a little bit of regret of doing it as well from her, right? And of course, you can feel regretful about it, but I don't think you should, like, really, be claiming, like, taking back almost your consent like 3 months later, right? Whenever you realize that you regret you did it. Like, sure, you can regret that you did that or whatever with him, but, I don't think it's really helpful to be, throwing around a lot of this stuff where people can take it, even further than it already is. And it kind of, moves it further from being like people trying to find out the truth of what happened, to allow, people arguing different kind of like points that have been brought up in this. And again, there's been more kind of comments as well saying, Maybe it's the people pleaser in me, bro. You sucked a blank, then regretted it afterwards. Trying to make it sound like she got assaulted, which again, I do think is true. That's what it's trying to make it sound out to be like. But again, after hearing the story, it just doesn't really sound like that. And I think a lot of people are actually, starting to realize that maybe, yeah, this is a little bit too crazy. You can call him a cheater, of course. And I still think that, what she said about the, afterwards asking, have you been in a relationship or whatever, and him obviously not being so truthful about that. Sure, you can 100% say that, and maybe you're regretful over that as well, because you didn't know and you didn't ask before, and maybe you didn't do enough research into it. But again, sometimes that just happens, right? You can't really go out and like accuse him of anything, because of course it's just like one of these it's just one of these things that happens, right? And maybe you'll regret it, and maybe you won't, and that's it, right? But I don't think he like necessarily like assaulted you or anything in a way that, some people are trying to make it out to seem like. And obviously saying, all I'm gathering is this dude was cracking, and they're all mad that they weren't the ones being cracked. I think that's crazy. So the only thing that Sykkuno did is reveal how many of these Asian streamers would jump at the chance to, yeah, I mean, I guess, right? They're saying she's lying, which again, I don't think she's lying. I wouldn't, like, again, I don't want to like do this thing of like, oh, she's not telling the truth. But even if she was telling the truth, right? 100%, I don't think it's much of an issue, right? The first kind of part that she brings up, obviously, the whole not being, talking about his relationship and things like that. Sure, that's the problematic part. I think everything that they did though, and that she explained, I just don't think it really warrants any kind of like call out or kind of allegations or whatever, because I don't think he's necessarily done anything wrong there, right? She's totally was into him and all of this kind of stuff, and it seems pretty consensual to me. So again, I don't think there should be an issue there, right? But people saying, I don't know if this counts as a non-consensual if you have hearing issues and accidentally say to asking if you're safe. But however, her accusation that he is pushy is serious, but needs far more elaboration about exactly how that played out. And yeah, a lot of people have been discussing maybe the pushy side of things, right? Maybe that could have some sort of issue, which again, sure, but it depends on how pushy that is, right? Because if he's extremely pushy to the point where he is almost forcing you to do this, then sure, right? I can understand why this would be a serious thing to kind of call out and whatever. But also at the same time, right, you got to kind of explain that well enough. You got to explain, why and what exactly it was that made this so pushy, and how this was a situation that you couldn't get out of. Because to me, it sounds like it's a situation that maybe he was a little bit pushy in terms of doing it, but you seem pretty down to do it anyways, right? But again, I don't know. Right? People say Sykkuno W, he went to his hotel room, watched a movie, did all that. Then I mean, I'm not gonna read that out. But at this point, what does streaming culture start talk about allegations like seriously instead of letting them play out as online drama? That this piece of information didn't bring world peace. Then saving your time. Conclusion: she had a one-night stand with Sykkuno, claiming she didn't have it in her to say no, and yeah, all of that. Which again, you can claim that you didn't have it in you to say no, but the thing is, right, from what I've seen, it doesn't seem like there was anything, there wasn't anything like forcing you to say like no, right? Or forcing you not to say no, right? You could have said no, right? And sure, if he ignored your request of no, then yes, then we could be talking about it and going, okay, that's pretty horrible. What the hell is going on? And again, it would escalate this kind of drama even further. But the fact is, you didn't say no, and that's the whole thing that people are not very kind of happy about, right? And I do think it is one of these things that, yeah, a lot of people are going to be debating it over, like, whether this is an issue or not. Again, I just don't think it is. I think obviously the whole relationship thing is an issue, of course. The whole not being truthful about his relationships and all that kind of stuff is an issue. But I don't think the actions that actually happened and how she explained them were an issue, unless obviously that forcefulness that she was talking about, not the forcefulness, of what's saying, pushiness that she was talking about was anything bad. But again, we don't know. So yeah, I mean, that is essentially all there is for this. I just kind of wanted to give you guys a quick just TLDR of what was going on, because obviously it's a 12-minute whole clip. But I do think, as I said, it doesn't help whenever stuff like this comes out, whenever there is a serious situation going on, because it kind of muddies the waters a little bit. And of course, you know, actual people that speak out about actual issues like this, you know, that have actually, you know, potentially have actually had some, you know, pretty horrible stuff happen, could, you know, end up being kind of drowned out because of clips like this, which obviously make it seem, you know, this clip makes it seem to be like he assaulted her or whatever, when in actual fact it seems like, you know, they just had a consensual, you know, time together, right? That's the best way I could really put it for a YouTube video. But again, I think it's pretty crazy. But as I said, maybe there'll be more information that comes out after this that maybe will change my mind. But for now, you know, just looking at the clip, looking at all of this, it's just like, I don't know. This one just isn't really it. But hey, you know, we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, that's probably got for this video. If you guys did enjoy it, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Also, go to GameSubs, use my code Kaza, get 10% off. Again, they've got a ton of really cool stuff over there. Definitely recommend checking it out. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. That's all. See ya.